Hi, welcome to the Howard University Entertainment Collective, sponsored by Macro. We are excited today to celebrate Howard University homecoming virtually. My name is Dolly Turner. I'm moderator for this evening. I'm a Howard University alumni from the School of Business. I am a film producer, primarily in documentary. I'm a board member of the Black House Foundation. Director of their Multicultural Producers Lab. And I'm happy to be here with you all this evening. I'd like to introduce you to Roche Jeffrey from Howard Entertainment Collective.
We're presenting this panel as the inaugural event of the Howard University Entertainment Collective in partnership with Macro. We hope to establish a community amongst BICEN creatives in entertainment and hope this panel serves as a resource for our Howard student and alumni family.
You know, I'm really excited about the fact that we're all coming together at an important historic time in our country. I mean, I think we could all agree that we are so proud of our vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, and the visibility that the university has received over the last couple of years, to be quite honest. And the fact that our entertainment industry is thriving and that there's so many Howard alumni who are making such a significant impact. And I think that's, you know, reflective of the amazing panelists that we're bringing together tonight, who are all award winners, game changers. They're shifting the culture. And they're really opening doors and making a significant impact in Hollywood. So I think, you know, where I'd really like to start tonight is talking a little bit about your Howard experience, and how Howard has impacted your journey in film and TV. And I think I'll start with Janine and Roche. I mean, both of you all are prolific writers, very accomplished writers in our industry. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, what were your majors and how did they prepare you for your work today? And also, inside of that, please tell us a little bit about what you're doing today.
Great. Do you want to start? Okay. I am right now running a show called The Kings of Napa on, it's being developed for OWN. I'm doing a mini room for the show, while I'm currently also executive producing Claws. We're finishing up the show. I started as I actually started as a film major. And through friends, I was kind of convinced that I should maybe go and become an English major because I really wanted to be a writer. And it is literally through reading all the great writers while I was at Howard that I actually learned story. So my journey from Howard was really about having a film base because I minored in film, but I also eventually committing to majoring in English so that I could learn. And I think whether you're writing television or you're writing film, the basis of literature is great story, and that's where you can get, a big, big foundation.
And Roche?
Yeah, so I'm a television writer and also a director. I've recently worked on a show called Woke, which is on Hulu, Bigger on BET Plus, and an animated series that will be on HBO Max next year. I mostly focus on comedy, but I've also done an equal number of comedy and dramas, actually. And for me, I think this, much like Janine, I was an English poli-sci double major. And I actually do think that I bring both of those majors to my work all the time. Definitely the English component for sure as a writer. And the political science of it all. Most of my work, I was just telling somebody today in a meeting that most of my work is actually about identity politics or actual politics, or social justice. And so that foundation was something that I learned at Howard, and I definitely bring that to my work now.
Excellent. And Hans, tell us a little bit about your journey at Howard.
Yeah, my journey at Howard was a little bit different. I went to Howard grad. So I went to Morehouse College undergrad, where I had a various number of majors. I was a French major. I was a poli-sci, English at one point. And yeah, I had spent some time interning at Edmonds Entertainment in Los Angeles, and I kind of wanted to go back home to the East Coast. So I was working on various film sets, and then 9/11 happened and sort of shut down some of the opportunities to work freelance in the film industry. And that's when I decided that I really needed to go to graduate school. So I interviewed with AFI, NYU. I think I looked at Columbia, and then somebody suggested that I visit Howard's graduate film program. And so I kind of took a road trip and drove down to DC and visited the campus. And I remember Abby Ford, who was the head of the program, rest in peace, Abby Ford. And he just totally welcomed me into his office and was like, hey, okay, let me explain to you what you would get at this program. If you were on the West Coast, what you get in this program in New York, and this is what you're going to get at Howard. And by the time I walked out of his office 45 minutes later, I was committed to being at Howard. So I had the great sort of graduate experience at Howard. And the great thing about that particular program is we interacted extensively with the undergraduate students. So we got to know so many of the students who were there on the undergraduate level. And so, yeah, that was my experience.
Excellent. And Ty?
Yeah, so for me, I went to Howard School of Communications, and I studied radio, TV, and film with a concentration in TV production. And that was really beneficial for me at the time because all I knew when I started at Howard was that I really wanted to make a career in media, but I didn't know exactly where or exactly what lane I was going to take. So that exposed me to all different areas and elements of the media industry. And through that, I was able to determine that I actually did want to focus on TV, specifically TV development. So that brings me to today. I am now a junior development executive at Amazon Studios, focusing on drama for the 1-hour dramas. And prior to this job, I was at BET on their original programming team as well. And so Howard definitely led me to that path, and it's a path that I love. I love what I do, and I never would have known this was even an area where I could be without what I learned at Howard.
Excellent. So Howard prepared you all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So, I'd like to talk a little bit now about your career journeys and like what some of your really important breakthrough moments were. And if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of call out, I'd like to hear about your breakthrough moment, and then I may pull one out that I see as a breakthrough moment. And, if you don't mind, Janine, I'd kind of like to start with you. I mean, it's a pretty significant accomplishment for an African-American woman still today to have a first look deal at the largest studio in Hollywood, Warner Media. You've had an amazing career, with working on shows with Claws on TNT, Self-Made, the Madam C.J. Walker on Netflix, Crime Farm from Warner Media, working, with executive producers Nicole Kidman and Blossom Films. So what led to this breakthrough moment of your first look deal? And congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I have an overall deal at Warner's. I think I've just been in the trenches for a while. I started in comedy, and I think one of my big breakthroughs was not only getting my first job where Yvette Lee Bowser hired me, who is an acclaimed showrunner, but I sort of made the decision early on in my career that I wanted to write drama, and I got a job working for John Wells on one of his shows called Third Watch. And so for me, that was a big break because I got to spend 9 seasons between Third Watch and ER, getting mentored by some of the best writers in the business. And I think that's the key to all of this. You actually need to go to a place where you can grow and you can move up and you can have public failure and people aren't going to fire you. They're like, that wasn't a good script, but we're going to do another script. And I think that is something that a lot of African-American people have not been afforded that opportunity to actually sit somewhere and learn. But now that like inclusion is definitely on the topic of everyone's mind, the gates are opening. And so hopefully more people will get in, and beyond getting opportunities, they'll get an opportunity to get mentored.
And Roché, you have, for your recent role on Smilf, which was a Golden Globe nominated series, How did that impact? Did that represent a new breakthrough moment for you in your career as a writer? Was there a big breakthrough that happened before then? What did you feel like was one of your big steps?
I always tell people that I don't think you really make it in Hollywood. I think you're always kind of making it. So I think every time I get a job, I'm like, this is a breakthrough. And at this point, I've worked on maybe 7 or 8 shows. And I'm a upper level writer, but, so I would say that I'm constantly kind of breaking through to the next level in my career as I move and navigate the business. But SMILF is interesting because this is just the truth. I remember getting that show. Was my first comedy that I wrote on, because I'd written only on dramas up to that point. So it was a breakthrough in that sense. But I remember I got an opportunity to interview for Blackish and some other comedies as a result of it. And what was so funny is in one of the meetings I had, it was a Black showrunner, and he was like, "You have a white comedy credit." And it was like, we were like, "That's why." And he was like, "That's crazy." And the thing is, like, there are not a lot of Black writers who do work on quote unquote white comedies. And so that was, and I've heard that multiple times from people like, "Oh, you're on SMILF?" Like, okay. And so it's an unfortunate reality, but for some people that does mean something, the fact that it is a white comedy. So it's a breakthrough in that way, I would say.
It's so funny because in drama, it's much more integrated, and comedy is not, and that is a weird thing that we've got to change.
Yep, for sure, absolutely.
And so for Hans, you were a hybrid. You were a cinematographer, a very accomplished cinematographer who's worked with, some of the our biggest directors now, like Spike Lee, Ava DuVernay, and Sasha Jenkins. So how, it's interesting because you're also not necessarily based in LA, and we'll talk about location in a little while, but what were some of your important milestones? After you left Howard, what happened, and how did you come to work with Spike and Ava and Sasha?
Ava, I'd sort of known from working on some smaller projects that she had going on. I really got to know Ava through working on a firm, sort of just trying to distribute films out of DC and using sort of Howard as a base. So that's where Howard kind of comes in again. Mm-hmm. I think some of the breakthrough moments were getting to work with Brad and Ava in the trenches when we were doing Middle of Nowhere. And that just gave Ava an opportunity to see me beyond just as a focus puller, because I was working as Brad's focus assistant. And then I think the real breakthrough moment was when she asked me to shoot Venus Versus, which was an ESPN 30 for 30 doc that she did. I think it was called Title IX, about films about women in sports. And that's a big leap, because she saw me beyond like being a focus puller and was like, "I see you as a cinematographer." And that successful relationship led to her asking me to work on the 13th and shooting the 13th. So for me, like Venus Versus, even though not a lot of people know that film, that was the breakthrough moment, because that was sort of an audition for somebody to see you not only just as a focus puller, but then to see your potential and to see that you're like a full-fledged filmmaker, and that's what you bring even when you're just a focus puller, and to trust you with their work is like, I think a bit of a big deal. So that for me was really the breakthrough that's led to everything else. And the hybrid part is getting a chance to work with directors that closely means that I really have a keen understanding of what I need to do to produce, movies, documentaries, and features. And so that's sort of what I brought to the table as like a cinematographer / producer. That understanding, having worked with so many directors closely, not only as a cinematographer, but as a focus puller, like all the little details, you just hear things. You hear at the end of the day, like what they went through and what they have to go through, because you're always close to the camera. So you just hear what producers talk about, you hear what directors talk about. Sometimes it's not that you become a confidant, but you're an ear that's like, will always listen. And so I feel like that, that was that moment.
So, and And Ty, you know, what's interesting, I think, about your background is it looks like you started off really working in documentary with companies like PBS and Smithsonian, and then you were able to pivot to networks and work in unscripted and scripted. And now you're at, you know, one of the kings of entertainment, which is Amazon, because everybody would love to be working with the streaming services and in drama development. So, you know, what helped you, you know, what decisions informed how you navigated those choices? And what do you think kind of led to your big break? Was it the films that you did at BET, like the Bobby Brown story? Or was it bigger, you know, the first series on BET Plus? Just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, well, I want to echo what Roche said, and I really do believe that any gig you get in this industry is absolutely a breakthrough. And so, you know, I can't say that I necessarily planned for my career to go the way that it has, but more so it's about being available and being in the right place at the right time to accept whatever the right opportunity may be. For me, when I think about what I consider to be a big breakthrough, it actually is an internship. I did an internship for Disney ABC, and I worked on a new talk show that they were launching. It was the Katie Couric Show. But the reason why I consider that to be a breakthrough is because I got that gig just before my senior year of college, and at the time it was the biggest thing that I had gotten. So for me, that was the first time that a career in entertainment actually felt tangible, and it went a long way for me as well, because having a company like Disney ABC on your resume, especially just coming out of college, opens a lot of other doors for you. So I could trace every place where I am, including Amazon today, right back to that one internship and just the power of having a big brand like that believe in you. So that is, I don't know if it's my biggest breakthrough, but it's the one that's most special to me.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So we're all celebrating each one of the steps and the victories. There's a positive message in that too, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Janine, you look like you wanted to add something to
No,
that.
no, I was just, it's always a step. Like every day is another step in it. You're just never done with that, you know?
You know what? And just to kind of build on this a little bit, you know, the interesting thing about the entertainment business is that while you can go to graduate school, so much of it is on the job learning, and every new step that you have, every new opportunity for growth, you know, stretches you in ways, and there's not necessarily always something that prepares you. So, you know, what do you draw on, whether or not it's personally or spiritually or your relationships or your network, that kind of give you the confidence to take that step, but also, you know, rise to the challenge?
Oh, that's a great question. I every time I do a panel, I always tell people that I personally think, for at least me, like a solid percentage of my success is attributed to like my spiritual work that I've done. And I'm not a religious person at all, but I really do think that this is a crazy and insane business. So if you're going to navigate it, you need to be grounded in something.
Right.
And I have a writers group where we do not write. Like literally, it's just a bunch of my cuckoo friends. We get together and we do like full moon manifestations, and we text each other like when we're like, I need to break through, you know, my emotional blah 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 walls to get this new deal. And that's what we do. Like that's kind of the nature of our friendship, and that's the stuff that helps to keep me motivated and when the times are dark, because it's not easy. I mean, I remember when I've been in LA for 6 years and a little bit of change, and there were times where I was sleeping on a mattress that was like 6 inches thick, because it was like a foam mattress topper on the ground. So the only way you can move through that and continue to work toward your dreams is if you believe in like something on some level, whether it is for you God or a spiritual thing. You have to believe in something, right? And and that's what kept me going. And so having that group of people that I could speak, you know, to and confide in helped me navigate this journey. And to this day, like they're the people that I kind of call on a spiritual level to keep moving.
I have a good group of girlfriends around me. I mean, and guy friends that I rely on and that I seek counsel from. I also sort of think you've got to get adjusted to fear and get out of your comfort zone, because a lot of this business is you being out of your comfort zone. So I think it's important for like all people who want to write, if you want to direct, if you want to be a cinematographer or a development exec, you've got to be adjusted to the word no and push through that, because it's going to be a friend of yours that you're going to meet and you're going to be like, you know what, I've had that happen before, and you have to just keep doing the work. So I think it's like focusing on just doing the work, because eventually things will work itself out.
I would agree. I feel like I'm obsessively a below the line sort of champion, and I know working below the line, and even though I do some work above the line now, it's showing up, saying if you're going to do something, do it. Sometimes it doesn't pay very well, or it's not very glamorous, but you genuinely learn something from everything that you do. And I think it's important when there are some like huge and glamorous opportunities that you take those as well. But there are so many unglamorous things that are the foundation of your success. And I definitely feel like that's the case for me. I feel like that's like indie is my journey. The non-glamorous things are my journey. And from time to time, I still will do something unglamorous. Like somebody called me to do something. I said, I'll do it. And I had no assistants, no big crew. I was like, no, I'm going to do it by myself and grab all my gear and just show up, because I always want to remind myself that that's the foundation of so much of my career. So show up to the plethora of opportunities that are going to come to you, the great ones and the ones that you're like, even if you like, okay, I'll never do that again, but you did it that one time, you pushed through, you have the fortitude to do it. So believe in that.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what everyone else said about firstly having a strong support system just to have your back and sort of ground you when you need that grounding. But also, like many other people, I'm someone who deals with imposter syndrome from time to time. So when I have those moments, it's about really stopping and reminding yourself that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You've earned your way to wherever it is that you are. And just reminding yourself of the things that you've done to get to the place where you are, and not selling yourself short. It's just so important to have that presence of mind as you reach those challenges.
Yeah, and I wanted to add one last thing too. I think also having a sense of purpose, because if you don't know why you're doing it, then when you're Hans and you're in the middle of a desert, I'm just imagining that's where you were. And you're lugging all this equipment or whatever, or you're hearing all those no's, as Janine was mentioning, then you're going to give up, right? If like you know that you're serving a purpose, it's not about money or fame, it's about servicing this particular vision for your career and what you want to say to the world. It will help to sustain you.
So, I want to talk a little bit now. Each of you has varied experience in film and television. And, it's interesting. I feel like I'm just going to call it out. I think that in some ways, to me, I feel like millennials have had the luxury of being hybrids, whereas some people who preceded them in the business have had to focus on one particular path, right? Because sometimes when you walk in the door and you say, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a director, people are like, okay, so who are you? What do you do? And I mean, what is your strength? Or can you do all of that, or can you not? Or are you capable of doing all that? But in reality, we know that we're all multi-talented, beings, and that we're capable of so much more, especially if we don't put ourselves in a box. So, Roché, Janine, and Hans, each of you has varied skills. I think, Janine, you, when I looked at your IMDb page, I noticed that you also produced. I don't know if that was producing in a writing capacity.
It's in a writing capacity. It's a level of writer. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, great. And Roché, I know that you are a writer, director, and an actor. So, how do you develop and gain respect in each one of those areas? And I think this is an important question because it also helps people build confidence and think about how do you balance all three? And how do you kind of strategize around planning the development of your skill set? in each one of those areas?
I think, well, I'm a firm believer that you have to kind of establish yourself in one thing before people will take you seriously in 7 other things, you know?
Okay.
So, you know, I've always said I'm a writer first. And I've worked on developing my skill sets in all these other areas. But I do think that there are people, even still, like, who look at you as being kind of all over the place, you know? If you are, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I'm a this, I'm a that. And those things are all legitimate. We see so many people. Donald Glover is a perfect example.
Right.
Who's a multi-hyphenate. Issa Rae is a multi-hyphenate. But I do also think that you have to kind of be focused at the beginning and prove yourself with one thing first. And then people are more inclined to be like, oh, okay, you know, if this person is such an exceptional writer, maybe they are a good director, or they're such an exceptional director, maybe they are good at this other thing. So that's what I've done, is that I've decided to just kind of like focus in on one thing.
Okay.
I would totally piggyback on that. I think I made myself, I consider myself the best like non-union focus puller in New York. I was like, nobody beats me. I will pull focus on a 1/4 on a moving diamond. And I had like such confidence in that. And that led me to work with people who then were like, hey, I need you to grab this camera and operate. And then it's like, I got to operate. And then it was like, oh, then you should be shooting, right? Like you're a shooter. And so you have to like be in your lane and master that. And then the other things, you know, open up. Like once 13th came out and then people saw me as a certain way as a cinematographer, then people ask you questions like, what else are you interested in doing? And people always assumed it was about directing. But as for me, it was about producing. It was like really about, okay, I want to open opportunities not only for myself, but for other people, because I didn't feel I could do that as the best, you know, award-winning cinematographer only. Like I knew that producing would really expand the opportunities. It would expand my career in interesting ways. So, and then to let go of the fear, because even your friends are going to be like, what are you doing? Like, why? And the people that are even in your brain trust are gonna be like, are you sure that's what you want to do? But when you have that thing, and I'm sure everyone on the panel can echo this, when you have that thing where you know I can do this, like I can do that, then you just have to jump and do it. And I have a thing that I tell students all the time is, so you have to talk it out as well. You have to not be afraid and say, oh, I also do this. And some people will laugh and some people will discount you, but there's going to be a person who takes you seriously. It's like, because you didn't know that they were looking for that. They weren't looking for you for this thing that you're known for. They were looking for something else. And you're an opportunity for them as well as they're an opportunity for you. And so I think you have to be bold. I think is the theme that you're hearing a lot of people on this panel say. There's a certain boldness and certain confidence, even when you're not sure about yourself. And I think definitely in Hollywood, where you are siloed, where if you do this, you cannot do that. We're in a great era where you can get away with being siloed, not being siloed, and being a hybrid, especially as a person of color, and others, quote unquote, others in this industry. And I think now is the time to do that. But you definitely have to develop the skills. You've got to be able to. If you can't hit home runs at every single bat, you've got to be able to get on base. You can't have strikeouts.
I think I definitely think you need to concentrate on one thing and then break out, because I think craft is so key to this. I think, you know, everybody says, oh, I can direct, but it actually is a craft and it's an artistry. And some people, if you've been concentrating on directing for 15 or 20 years, you're probably better than the person that just decided yesterday to direct. But that doesn't mean you as a writer producer can't direct. It's just that the same energy that you put into your writing career, you're going to need to put into directing to make your skill set compete with the art that's out in the world. So I think it's kind of having respect for the practices. I mean, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I can write. And I'm like, well, you can, just because you bought a ream of paper and have a computer doesn't mean you can write. It's actually an art form that people have studied. So I think focus, if you think you want to be a multi-hyphenate, if you think you want to write and direct, focus, try to do both. If you want to be a triple hyphenate and act as well, take classes in acting and write and direct. But then you've got to see where your bandwidth goes.
Mm-hmm.
That was a word. That was a word.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The money.
I mean, it's just an art. I mean, that's the thing. It's like people have been doing it. It's like nobody tomorrow says, "Hey, I'm going to be a cinematographer." Like people. I mean, that would be disrespectful to Hans. Like people have to study it and practice it and be in the trenches, and
That's the funny thing that you say about directing, because people always think they can just jump and direct.
Yeah.
Yep. And writing too.
People
Oh,
say that with
writing.
writing. People.
It's the beautiful thing about being a cinematographer. Nobody says in their right mind, "I'm going to shoot this movie tomorrow."
Yeah.
And you can't even be surrounded by people who do it, but it happens a lot with directing. And I'm so glad you said craft, because as a below the line, I feel like I'm a below the line representative. That's who we are. We are obsessed, like below the line. We are obsessed with our craft. If you're a sound designer or you're a sound recorder, you are obsessed with getting that sound perfect. If you're a focus puller, you are trying to be the best focus puller ever. If you're a grip, you are trying to be the best grip, the best gaffer, the best production designer. And sometimes people don't understand the years and years of tricks that we've learned to put into it. And for me, that's why I don't call myself, I've had opportunities to direct, but I don't call myself a director, because directing is a craft. And when I sit next to a director, when I know you're a director, I can't put my name on that. That doesn't mean I can't do this thing for a day and it'll be on my resume, but to say I'm going to make a career out of it, no, that's not what I'm going to do, because I respect directors and I love collaborating with directors to the point where I want to work with directors. I don't want to work with me as a director. I want to work with directors. You know what I mean?
You're a great director too, Hans. You're a very talented director as well.
Yeah, but direct, like my creative partner is a director. That's all he's ever wanted to do with his life. That's all he does. He doesn't even listen to music. He just directs. Like that's what he does.
Yeah.
And that's the person I want to be in the trenches with.
Right.
Yes, you can ask me to go do a commercial. Like I can go do a commercial. But I wouldn't take on necessarily a script necessarily, because even if I, as a filmmaker, I have notions of what to do, and it's not that I can't do it, but in the hands of that person, that's what they were made on this earth to do. The script is just going to be that much better. So why not give it to them? And that's sort of where being a producer gives me the opportunity to see that, to see the field and say, yeah, this belongs to this director, and I want to collaborate with them. And so if you're listening to this, focus on that thing, become the expert at that thing, because if you really want to be a hybrid, it's only being an expert in that one thing that opens the lanes to everything else.
Right.
And then, Ty, the interesting thing is that you've worked with a lot of different genres. And so you've worked in film, you've worked in television, you've done unscripted, you've done documentary, and now you're working in drama development, in series drama development. And, to me, series is a very, very specific, I have such a great deal of respect for people who are series writers, because it's far more complex than anyone would ever imagine as they're lying on their sofa. It's sucking it up and enjoying every little morsel of every little word. So how did you position yourself to make that transition? Because in some ways you're a hybrid too, as an executive, right? And so you've been able to navigate a lot of different roles, a lot of different genres. How did you present yourself, and how did all of your prior experience prepare you to work in drama development?
Yeah, it was really born out of necessity, to be completely honest with you. When I first started at BET, I started as an assistant to two executives. One was the head of unscripted and the other was a senior level scripted executive. And so I had to learn how to cover both, because when you're an assistant in Hollywood, that's also your apprenticeship towards whatever you're looking to do next. And so I didn't have the luxury, frankly, of focusing on one or the other. I had to learn both, and I had to be good at both. What I realized over time, I spent 5 years at BET. A few years in, I realized that my passion lied more with scripted. And so I made a pivot there and started covering scripted series there, both drama and comedy. And the only reason it wasn't specified even further is because BET as a network didn't break out their team that way. And so again, just in order to have that job, I had to be able to cover really whatever was thrown at me. So in my experience, I think that that's made me a versatile executive, which I appreciate having that skill set. But I also do agree, drama series specifically requires a certain level of skill, which I started covering at BET, and it just so happened that when Amazon was hiring, I was in the right place at the right time, talking to the right person. And so I wish I could say that I had planned this windy road that I've taken, but it sort of happened that way, and I was just ready to meet the opportunity when it came my way.
So, I think that, we're kind of getting towards the end of our time. So I want to kind of start thinking about talking a little bit about looking forward. And I'm going to start with you, Ty. The industry is undergoing a pretty big shift. Recently with Black House, we did a conversation with a CAA agent, and she talked about the fact that, the number of television buyers has gone from 20 to 7. Obviously the streamers are buying a significant amount of content. For independent filmmakers, there's also a shift because there are actually fewer distributors that are available because some people have gone out of business. So when people are thinking about their careers, whether or not they're entering the business now or at the middle of their career or at the height of their career, what do you think are some important things to think about as a person who is on the content buying side of the business? What do people need to think about in terms of where we're going in the future, how to position themselves, and what people are looking for, and what's important?
Yeah, well, first, I think that's a great question. For me on the development side, I would say that now is probably a better time than any for any creators to sell a project, because even though the number of buyers on they're buying more than has ever been bought before from any one buyer in the past. And so the opportunity to sell content is still there by and large. What I think is important moving forward is originality, because on the backside of that, you have so much more content being pumped out. How are you going to put forth a concept that really stands out and feels different from the million other things that anybody could be watching right now? And I think we're in a really interesting time right now to just think about, what is life going to look like in the future? That's something that I'm thinking about on a daily basis as I'm reading. A lot of things that have come our way are things that have maybe been written, we'll just say pre-COVID. And so the world has changed drastically. And one thing that I'll speak for myself, one thing that I'm looking for are stories that depict whatever our future is, because I think we can all agree that whatever the future is, isn't going to look like what our past was. And no one can no one can guess or estimate what's going to happen. But the point is, life is changing for us all. And so our media should be changing as well to reflect that.
Interesting. And what would you say, Janine?
In terms of what people should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think as we look to the future, I mean, you're in a position now where you're running a lot of shows, right? You have multiple shows that you're running, and inside of that, you're probably in your writer's rooms also having to pivot, and then you're looking to develop new content. So what advice do you have for people in terms of, continuing to grow, working with you or companies like yours or shows like yours?
Yeah, I think if you're a writer and you're coming up, I think it's about developing your voice and getting your writing out there. And it's what Ty said, being as original as possible. I think people are always looking for new voices. I mean, I saw a piece in a festival that I loved during all of the protests. I was thinking about what needed to be on TV. I called this guy, he was in Chicago. I sent his piece to somebody at Warner Brothers. The president of Warner Brothers called me and said, let's make a deal with this kid. I think people are always looking for new content. And whether you write it or create it or you spot it and you find it, I think just like Ty was saying, now is the time to buckle down and write and get your voice heard, because people are listening. I think just people are listening and buying.
Excellent. And how about you, Hans?
I guess I would come from it from more of like sort of a production side.
Sure.
This is definitely an interesting time period. I definitely feel like those of us who are in unscripted in terms of documentary are definitely working, and script is working as well. But if I were to look past some of the limitations that COVID has on production, and I think we will get past those limitations, this is a great time to be an independent filmmaker. I think to get your first thing out there. I mean, there's just, I just bought my first digital camera, which was a Red Komodo. I'm not bigging up any particular brand, just to say technologically, like where I was when I came in, and I'm like loading a 525 Airy, that's like 45 pounds. And then you get this thing that can do anything you want it to do for this great price point. There's not an excuse for not sort of organizing and getting your film out there, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
This is the best, like it's never been like this. And if you ask some of the OGs in the business, if you ask a Haile Gerima if he had some of these opportunities, how many more films he would have made in his lifetime. And so from that perspective, I think, and you're going to get into some obstacles about, okay, once your film is done, once you've done everything, it's ready to go out there. Okay, how are you going to get it distributed and seen? But you have to get it made first. And I think there's no excuse not to make a quality first film. There just isn't, because you have everything you need. And where you save money on this, then you can spend money on, the things that you can't go cheap, which is like sound design and scores and things like that. So I think that if you're, if you have a passion for directing and you want to direct your first film, push yourself, jump up past that DSLR, like get level up a little bit, because it's worth the investment in your project to be taken seriously by the people who are on this panel, who could see it at a festival and realize that your voice is important and they want to help to elevate that voice.
And Roché, I think that we will, I'd love to hear from you, and then we're going to ask one last round of a short question, a short but powerful question. So Roché, what advice do you have for people as we're looking forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the COVID of it all, it's, I say all the time, this has been the worst and best year of my life. Because I've been like incredibly productive. I've sold 2 shows in this time, right? And I would not have been able to do that if it weren't for COVID, because I had nothing else to do, right? What am I going to do? Look at myself for hours on end? So I buckled down and I did the work. And back to what Janine said earlier, which is actually one of the refrains that I kind of play through I say it's a mantra for me, like do the work. And I think this is an incredible opportunity in time for people to be creative. And as a writer, I think that what Ty was saying, I think is so potent, because I think a lot of people, what are you saying? It's back to also the idea of like having a vision for your career and having purpose. Like, what are you saying? And what you're saying has to change in the time of COVID. Nobody cares about stupid stuff. Like, we want to have things that have like meaning, right? Because our lives are so dramatic, right? So I think this is an opportunity to lean into your voice and to get focused. Even though we are distracted by doom and the Hunger Games of it all. You can find pockets of focus to really, because if you don't do it now, I don't know when you're going to do it.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna wrap out with. What are your 3 most give us 3 pieces of advice that you have in order to be successful in entertainment, and it could be 2.
I'll say something. I would say be persistent. I mean, this is about persistence, and so it's just doing it and doing it. If you're a writer, write and just keep writing, and because that's how you get better. You have to keep churning out stuff. And the third thing I would say, it's piggybacking off what Hans said. I think for everybody who wants to make something, make it. Because even if it's not great, you made it. I would tell everyone, make a short, make a feature. If you want to write the feature and your best friend who's a director wants to direct it, collaborate with people, but just make stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Sure. Well, I would say, first of all, I'll echo one of Janine's earlier points, which is to study. Like, make sure you really, really study whatever it is that you want to do. I'll just say from the development side, it's very easy to tell a script from a writer who has studied their craft and somebody who is taking their first stab at it. So if you're serious, make sure you study your craft. Another piece of advice I would give is to be humble. You know, I find that a lot of people aspire to the end goal and they don't necessarily think about all the steps along the way. So when I say be humble, I mean be open to opportunities that maybe aren't exactly the dream, but will bring you a step closer to the dream. And lastly, this is a piece of advice a professor gave me while I was at Howard, which is to network with the people next to you. Again, people try to network, and this is totally fine too, with people who are doing the things that they want to do and people who are running shows and running companies, but it's just as valuable to network with your own friend group or classmates or whoever, because you all are the ones who will be growing and climbing at the same time. One day can be just as beneficial to you. So that's what I would say.
Great.
And Roche, as we wrap out.
Yeah, I would say have a plan. I think a lot of times people think that because this industry is so glamorous that it's not a business. And it is a business. It's the entertainment business. And you have a plan for almost any career you want to navigate. Have a plan, write it out, be thoughtful about it. Second thing I would say is to not be a monster. I think that a lot of times people allow ego to get in their way, especially when you're talking about things that are creative. Be humble, as Ty said, but also be humble in the sense that you're willing to take advice and willing to take notes so that you could grow and become better at your craft. And thirdly, I think that it's really important to seek counsel, right? Like, find a mentor, even if somebody won't be your mentor, like technically and formally, like make them your mentor, right? Indirectly, like find ways to build relationships with people who are maybe a step or two ahead of you, and to help, guide your career.
So following our panel today, I just want to thank again Roche and her team of Quan and Janique and Candace from the Howard University Entertainment Collective, as well as Macro. All of you will have an opportunity to ask Roche any questions. Roche, can you share the handles on social media that people can join right after the panel?
Yes, at Roche Jeffrey, RocheJeffrey on Twitter. I'll do a AMA about entertainment for the next hour or two, depending on how I feel.
So I think as we finish out today, I'm going to kind of circle back to where we started. This is probably one of the most significant, I think, milestones in our history. We all come from a very long legacy of leaders that began, with our ancestors, our forefathers, and with the founding of Howard University in 1867. We have a responsibility to vote, to honor our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents. Please make sure that you are registered to vote. Go to vote.org to check the status of your registration. There are still states where it's not too late to register to vote. Make sure that you reach out to your friends, your family members, and your elders to make sure that they have all the information that they need. And thank you. Good night. We look forward to seeing you all soon, to supporting you. We're all here. And thank you, Howard, for giving back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.